What's up, guys? Welcome back, Project Time Garage. Today we're going to be helping a buddy. Actually, we're just going to be watching a buddy lift his truck as we sit back and sip on some coffee and not help at all, and maybe film and get in the way as much as we can. Just kidding. We're going to help him. Anyway, this truck, it's way too short. It needs to be way higher because he's pretty short. See, kind of balances things out. Anyway, we were starting out, we were just going to put a leveling kit on the front of this truck because it sits really, really short in the front, a little bit taller in the back, being a 3/4 ton. So we went ahead and decided to get a little bit more in the front and then a little bit in the back, and that'll work itself out. So anyway, let's put a leveling / lift kit under this truck along with some 35-inch tires. It's going to look good. Let's get after it. So the first thing we've got to do, get the truck up in the air. That goes without saying. But what we have to pay attention to here is we have to jack the truck up enough so that it's high enough so that we can drop the axle down and still have room to get the lift underneath it. So basically what it boils down to is if I put a regular floor jack under this thing and send it up and drop the axle, I'll end up with a problem. The axle won't go down far enough, the truck can't go up anymore, and you're in a kind of a catch-22. So we're going to go ahead and block up under the jack and get this body or this frame as high as we can get it off the ground before we do the first thing. So get about that process. All right, with the truck in the air, front tires off the ground, and we're supported with 2 jack stands and also 2 jacks. So we've got quite a bit going on under here. Additionally, usually what I'll do when I take the wheels and tires off of it, I like to slide the wheels and tires somewhere under there too, just in case, you know, if the first 2 things fail, at least there's something else to stop the thing from coming all the way down. So anyway, let's get these front wheels and tires off of here, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the lift. All right, so front wheels are off of here. Truck's supported pretty well in the air. Time to get the U-bolts off of the thing, and we'll go ahead and get this this steering pan rod, I think that's what it's called, drop down because we're going to have to put spacers under there to keep our geometry right. So let's tackle these U-bolts. Should be fun. It's a good idea before we start to go ahead and get some penetrating oil on these, because depending on what kind of environment the truck's been in, they can be a mess to get off. Worst comes to worst, we'll take a death wheel and just cut them. I've had to do that a few times. Beauty of the thing is it's a 7.3 diesel, so there's been enough leaks on it that pretty much everything's well lubed anyway, so that's a plus. This right here is the steering, I think they call it a steering pan rod. This is basically what keeps the front axle located underneath the truck and keeps it from going left and right as you steer. So since we're going to take the axle and drop it down, the geometry of this is about to change, and it's going to effectively make it almost too short. And since there's no way to adjust this bar, the kit comes with a couple of bushings that go under the mount as spacers to drop this whole mess down. But to just make it a little bit easier to do this job, we're going to go ahead right now and we're going to disconnect this bar here at this nut or this bolt. We're going to pull it off, which will disconnect this rod completely, and that'll make the axle float for us, so it'll be a whole lot easier to deal with. So let's get that. All right, we've got the U-bolts loosened up now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the brake line off of it so we can drop the axle down. We're going to go ahead and unhook the shock, and we'll unhook it probably from the bottom down here where it's at the shock mount, since the shock mount is captive underneath the U-bolts. So those things, and then also we're going to unhook the sway bar inlet, because that prevents us from dropping this axle down enough to get the blocks underneath it. So let's unhook those things, get this axle dropped down, and show you what we're doing as far as putting the actual lift under it. So let's do that. I'm just going to clamp off this brake line here. Since we're going to unhook it, we're just going to tuck it up there on top of the frame, and this will prevent me from losing brake fluid. And if the brake lines are any good, they'll survive this just fine. Before you take these things all the way out, make sure you have plenty of tension under your axle, otherwise your hand's underneath it and it'll hurt. At this point, there should be nothing stopping us from lowering the axle down. All right, so see if I can show you this too, because this is good if you're doing this at home, or if you're planning to do this. The leaf springs are held together with a bolt that you're not going to turn out. So we usually just put the death wheel on there, zip it out. When you do that, be ready, because these springs are going to pop apart at with a little bit of pressure. It's not going to hurt you, but it'll make you jump. So anyway, my assistant shall do what it is he does. Wear gloves and safety glasses, kids. So with that done, we can go ahead and get our spacers, our lift spacers, and go ahead and feed those up in there. So let's get that taken care of. All right, the proper torque spec, whatever that is. So, as you can see, this is now too long. So what we have to do is we have to cut it off even with that nut now, because this guy here sits down on top of the mess and the nut nestles comfortably right inside there. The shocks are junk. I just lifted them up by hand, no problem. Time for shocks. So that's our packs built. Sort of put back together. We've already got the other side done. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and do an initial tighten on the U-bolts. So this is not the final torque. This is a little bit more than snug to get them to hold together. We'll put everything else back together. We'll set the truck down on the ground, and then we'll go through our final torquing on these things. And then, after you drive it for a while, you got to come back and torque it again, just to make sure. All right, so the basic part of the front end is lifted up. We still have to hook up the sway bar inlink bushings, and we still have to deal with dropping this steering pan rod. The kit comes with a spacer to do that. So at this point, that's not even hooked up at all. So if you turn the wheel, the whole body is going to move back and forth on top of the axle. Looks kind of creepy. So that's the next thing. So the only thing that really scares me about this is the way Ford designed this. You're very prone to breaking one of these bolts, pulling it out, and once you do, you're out of options. I end up having to cut a hole in the side of my frame when I did this. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the deal right here. This is the mount for the steering pan bar. It's basically the piece that keeps the axle located under the truck. It has two bolts, one here and one here. Since the frame is completely boxed all the way around, there's no way to get in there. So what Ford has done is they've put a piece of metal laying all the way across here. In fact, you see it sticking out of the frame right here. It's a flat piece of metal laying right here, and that flat piece of metal has a nut basically stamped into it for this bolt and for this bolt. And what happens is when you start pulling this bolt out, there's been so many years of corrosion up here that it just spins it. And once it spins it, you're done. Only option you've got is to cut this bolt off. But the problem is it sticks up, the bolt sticks up way far into the frame, like up to about this level here, right? Let me get rid of this glove and illustrate. So the bolt sticks up to like right here, right? So you've got if you have a broken off part of that bolt and you go to start sliding it out, it'll make it to right here, which is where this bolt goes through the frame. Common logic would say, hey, no problem, we'll just pull this bolt out and free up our path. No, no, no. What Ford has done is they actually have a piece of pipe across here welded into the frame on both sides. So there's no way, once you start pulling this, once you break this, there's no way to get it out. It's not going to happen. So the only option you really have at that point is to take a plasma or something and cut an opening here to be able to cut off the bolt to be able to drag it out underneath this one. So we're going to go slow, we're going to take our time, we're going to hope that we don't break this bolt. Let's see what happens.
It feels pretty loose.
Yeah, it does. I think you may have dodged a bullet on it. At least it's got plenty of
oil on it.
Plenty of oil on it. It's not going to rust anymore. Oh yeah, I think you may have it now. Maybe, I don't know. Don't want to get too overzealous because.
Well, that's the reason I'm just kind of. Yeah. Barely.
Yeah. Hopefully we got down to where that oil's at now and.
Yeah, it's nowhere. If it breaks now.
It was already broke anyway.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll get that off and I'll bring you back as soon as we're to that point. This is the issue in question. So we're able to get the bolt out of it. So what happens is these bolts go in the bottom like so, right? Well, this bolt sticks up about that far, quite a ways. And as you can see, this nut is captive just by very little. So it doesn't take a whole lot of twisting and turning on this to either break this bolt or spin this thing. Usually you spin this thing. Once you do that, it's over with. So anyway, the idea is this thing's going to hook back in the frame back here, and basically the bolt has this spacer that they sent that goes under it, and that's it. So I'll get this stuck back on here, check back in with you here in a second. So days have passed. Actually, probably weeks have passed. A lot's happened. But the lift is finished. We were missing wheels and tires. Those things took forever to finally come in. So I wanted to hold up on the video and show you what it looked like completed. And it is now complete. I think it looks awesome. So what did we end up doing? We ended up lifting the front, but we actually did not lift the rear. And the reason for that is because once we got the front lifted, it actually sat almost perfectly level. So it was a leveling kit, but it did come with spring packs for the front and rear. But this truck had a pretty heavy rake to it anyway. The nose is down pretty good anyway. So in just lifting the front, we're within a ½ inch or so of being the same. So let me show you what we got going on here. On this end, measuring from a cleat to the center of the wheel well, you can see that's, call it between 8.5, 8 3/4, something like that. Probably about, I don't know, 8 9/16, something like that. Going back here to the back, we're just over 9 inches. Call it 9 and, I don't know, 9 3/16, or maybe 9 3/8, something like that. But we're just over 9 inches. So it's pretty close. We definitely don't want to lift the back anymore because we'll go back to that rake. But overall, the way the truck sits is pretty good. Of course, I can't get far enough away to show you all of it, but it's got a pretty good sit to it. So for tires, we chose 35 by 1250 by 20s, and they're Toyo Open Country MTs on a set of Hilo wheels. And I believe the wheels are, I want to say they are 20 by 12. And set of Bilstein shocks, front and rear, and the biggest weather guard toolbox that I have ever seen in my entire life. You could hide bodies in this thing, and I'm not joking. Unfortunately, the Project Time Garage sticker was a casualty of the extra tall toolbox. Nothing that can be done about that. But suffice to say, we're done. That was a good project. It made the truck look so much better, indeed better. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends about us, and I'll see you next time.